Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Romelli here with the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for September 15th, 2019, recorded around 11:21 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tropical storm Humberto has continued to strengthen, now up to 65 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, moving north at 7 miles per hour. It does indeed look like this will start to make that turn off towards the north, that sharp right turn off towards the north and east, becoming a hurricane later tonight. And you can see by the IR satellite presentation, there has been a little bit more in the way of convection in the southern region of the storm. The southern kind of periphery of the storm was sort of sheared with some of the westerly shear that was coming across, and some of this drier landmass air from Florida, from the Florida Peninsula, that was kind of gushing into the storm. However, we have seen that abate a little bit in this deeper convection that was pretty strong earlier. You could see that it was pretty strong. This is the morning here. This is roughly about 12Z or near. This is right near actually 9 o'clock in the morning, and this is running up to now about 11:17 in the morning. And you can see a lot of this deeper convection has started to abate across here, and we've started to see a little bit more of convective organization across this area, with the streaming outflow across almost all quadrants of the storm. You can see that better here on the visible satellite, tropicaltidbits.com here. This is the 1 minute floater, and you can see we've started to see a little bit more of this outflow start to expand on every single side here. And you can start to see a little bit more in the way of banding these storms that are coming in, filling in this dry air mass that was coming off the Florida Peninsula, and filling in this region of drier air, allowing somewhat of a mid-level eye to start to develop. And if we go to the, this is coming off the SIMS website here, the Central University of Michigan website, and you can see that we have started to see a little bit more of a primitive eye starting to develop here on the northern side of the storm. There is still some decent banding here going on towards the south and east of the center, which is right about in here. There's still some of this banding here towards the south, but you can see more primitively we're starting to see what looks like to be a small mid-level eye or eye wall begin to develop, though. However, it is not a fully closed region at this time, but you can still see that there is still some dry air near the system that is obviously getting entrained into the system. We are still getting this flow back behind the system. Of course, you know, this is the center of low pressure, so the flow is rotating around into this system, and you can clearly see that we've had a little bit of that dry air, that significant dry air entrainment that was earlier, and you can see that from earlier this morning that the structure was very loosely organized. It was not well defined compared to now. You can definitely tell that it has started to organize a lot better and get itself much more rounded. You see that here in the visible satellite with your center right about in here, and sort of seems to be trying to clear out some sort of mid-level eye. We'll see if that continues throughout the day. But you can clearly still see that there is still a moat of dry air, but there is more of that moisture air trying to work its way in and fill around the southern side. And we should be able to see the outflow now start to expand throughout the day today, given the fact that this convective burst has sort of died out. Again, this convective burst was putting a little bit of its own outflow, creating some of that shear and impacting on the southern quadrant of the storm, the shear vector. So we've started to see this convective band deteriorate throughout the day and lose its structure, which has allowed a little bit more of this outflow on the southern side to start to kick in and kind of free itself from any remaining shear. And the shear vector is expected to drop here considerably over the next coming 24 hours, as this eventually will make that hard right turn towards the northeast, and the shear vector and the outflow will be oriented in such a way that it'll be poleward, which will allow this storm to really take off here, nearing Category 3 intensity by the time it reaches Bermuda. Here on the track forecast, you can see this is the 3-day forecast, and here out by Wednesday, it's not really moving that much, only picking up speed here beginning on Tuesday, really, and it's still kind of hanging around there. Eventually, by Wednesday, this is near Bermuda, and the official forecast has this coming pretty close to Bermuda, so I wouldn't be shocked to see some tropical storm watches and warnings start to go up for Bermuda here in a little while here, as this will come pretty close to the Bermuda Islands here and may produce some squally weather at times. We'll see exactly how sharp this turn is. If it's a little bit more sharper, this may have a better chance at impacting Bermuda. Needless to say, this will come pretty close as it continues off towards the northeast and eventually more towards the north-northeast with time. Again, you can see here's the shear vectors here. There was a little bit of deeper shear around this area, however, that is starting to abate, and with the poleward advance of Humberto eventually becoming poleward into this shear vector, you should really start to see the storm ramp up in organization gradually over the next coming while. We can see here, this is the 12Z, that's from 8 o'clock in the morning, and you can see there is a little bit of a favorable pocket right here around the storm from some of that outflow, and as that continues to transpire towards the north, we'll see the structure gradually start to improve, and then eventually, once it becomes oriented with the shear flow vector, we should start to see this thing really start to take off in organization. Go to the, this is the radar from the Melbourne site, contrary of the College of DuPage website here. And you can see mainly most of our convection is off towards, well off towards the east here. Really no significant convection across the Florida Peninsula. I do suspect that with daytime heating, we'll start to see a little bit more increase in convection across the peninsula. You know, gusts maybe 30-40 miles per hour, not certainly out of the unusual specter of this time of year anyway, with any typical summertime thunderstorms. So really what we're watching today is the organization of how much this improves throughout the day and when exactly it makes that turn. And again, you can see, excuse me, we'll put this into motion here, and you can start to see how some of this banding here on towards the northern side of this will kind of rotate in and get pretty close to the coastline here. Again, we do have a high risk of rip currents across the Florida East Coast today, and swells will start to kind of radiate outwards, especially as it gains strength here over the coming days. And we should start to see some swells impacting portions of North Carolina and South Carolina, and potentially across the East Coast later in this week, as the storm starts to make that turn and gain strength. That will send out swells radiating outward and propagating towards the coast. So certainly something to monitor across portions of the East Coast. Of course, you could get some pretty high surf. Any surfers will love that area, but you know, for the main general public, just be aware that rip currents are going to be a high problem going forward because of the storm that it's expected to strengthen, and that's going to radiate swells outward and creating rip current threats across the East Coast and even the Florida East Coast across through Georgia and the northeastern states. We'll have to certainly monitor that. But again, the main takeaway is that Humberto is continuing to strengthen. Winds, maximum sustained winds now up to 65 miles per hour. We will continue to monitor exactly how strong this can get and how organized it gets today, and when exactly it makes that turn and how sharp it does. A lot of questions still have yet to be answered for our folks here in Bermuda. Of course, we'll keep you folks updated there in Bermuda. Everyone else, though, pretty much a sigh of relief, but we will continue to monitor the threats of Tropical Storm Humberto, soon to be Hurricane Humberto, probably later tonight. I will be back with another video update at 5 o'clock this evening. Until then, hope you all have a great rest of your day and stay safe, and I'll see you at 5.